Hello, everybody, and welcome to Life Negotiations. In this show, I interview professional negotiators and experts on negotiation about everything negotiation. My name is Lucine Merabi. I am a professional negotiator, and I love sharing information, tips, knowledge, everything I can with you about this fascinating topic. Now, my today's guest is an amazing person. I really love the work that he does. I love the personality that he has. He's a wonderful friend. Now, before telling you his name, let me just tell you what a fascinating background he has. So he has a Bachelor's of Arts in Psychology. He has a Master of Public Policy. He has a law degree. He is a professor at universities. He is a business lawyer. He is director of a company. He is an entrepreneur. He launched his own company and is managing it successfully. And he is a negotiation expert. And he has done a TED Talk. He is the one and only Kwame Christian. Kwame is the director of the American Negotiation Institute. He is host of the world's most popular negotiation podcast, Negotiate Anything. And the way we met is when he reached out to ask if I wanted to be guest on his podcast. And we had a wonderful collaboration. And ever since we stayed in touch. And I'm super happy to invite him to share his knowledge and his wisdom and his golden nuggets with us. What I love about Kwame, and I advise you to connect with him on LinkedIn because he's very active there and you can follow the work that he does. He writes for Forbes. He gives. And what I love about Kwame is that he shows that negotiation can be very collaborative, can be very nice and warm and kind and authentic, and is helping break this stereotype that negotiation has to be competitive and has to be difficult and has to be sometimes even be aggressive. Of course, sometimes we get to that point, but we don't have to. And there are all kinds of wonderful techniques to help you save time, energy, and money in negotiation. And Kwame is all about that. So I really look forward to this conversation. Join me in welcoming Kwame Christian. Hello, Kwame. I'm so happy to see you, to be with you today. It took us such a long time to have this appointment, right? With our busy, crazy calendars. I really look forward to this conversation. We've known each other for about 2 years now when I was a guest on your show, and then we stayed in touch. For those who don't know yet, and even after I did my best to give you the amazing introduction that you deserve. But can we please hear from yourself a bit more about yourself and what you do?
Yes, thank you, Lucine. I appreciate it. It's good to see you too. So my name is Kwame Christian. I'm the director of the American Negotiation Institute, and we conduct negotiation and conflict resolution trainings. And like you said, you were one of the guests on our podcast, Negotiate Anything, one of my personal favorite episodes. Thank you for coming. And we also have another podcast called Ask with Confidence as well.
Wonderful. So my first question is, why do you do what you do?
Yes. So I think when people look at me, they say, okay, Kwame, you're a business lawyer. That's why you're into negotiation. But you have to go a little bit further back. So when I was studying in undergrad, my degree was in psychology. I wanted to be a therapist. That's what I wanted to do.
Really?
Yeah. And so that was the direction I was going. And I had, there's this joke in psychology where they say that people like to study the thing that they have so they can learn to overcome it. And so for me, it was overcoming fear. And so it was fear of losing relationships. So I was a people pleaser, and which is funny considering the fact that I'm a negotiator now, right? That was one thing. And then social anxiety about public speaking, which again is funny considering I have a TED Talk and I speak in public for a living now. And so for me, I recognized that those things were holding me back. And so I wanted to be able to work with people to help them to overcome their fears. And so that was the trajectory. But then I said, okay, well, if I do this, I'm working with people one-on-one, my impact is limited. And then I started to get interested in politics. And that's why I went to law school and got my law degree and got a Master of Public Policy. But thankfully, as I went through school and I started to learn more about politics, I said to myself, there's no way I want to put my family through that type of existence. And so ever since then, it's really been me trying to find my way back to psychology. And so, of course, I go in and talk to business professionals who are having negotiations, multi-million-dollar deals, those type of things. But my real passion is helping people to overcome those fears, because we believe at the American Negotiation Institute that the best things in life are on the other side of difficult conversations. And so we want to produce as much content as possible to help people overcome those fears. So we have the TED Talk, Finding Confidence in Conflict, the book with the same title, Finding Confidence in Conflict, the podcast. We have the multiple podcasts we write for Forbes. We just want to create as much content as possible that's free or affordable, to help as many people as we can. And then as far as business functionality, then we go into these businesses, talk to leaders who are struggling with managing conflict and negotiators who are managing big deals, to help them get the best deal possible and feel more confident in their skills in the process.
Amazing. Well, that's a wonderful mission to have and a wonderful life mission. And I'm glad to be by your side by that mission, because obviously that's what's driving me as well. And there's so much to be done, right? So much to be done to help people have better conversations, better agreements, know themselves better, and simply have less conflict in life. So I'm really happy you're doing it. And when you say the best things in life are on the other side of difficult conversations, why difficult conversations, and what is then on that other side?
Well, when you think about it, if you think about the most impactful moments in your life, there's going to be a difficult conversation somewhere in the vicinity of that moment. So to a large extent, our happiness and sadness, success and failure is going to be predicated upon our quality of conversation. And so I tell people all the time, it's not a question of whether or not you negotiate. It's just a question of whether or not you do it well. And so since we're going to have these conversations and they're going to have a significant impact on our livelihood, then we should have them in a way that puts us in the best position for success.
Indeed. And in your book and in your TED Talk, you talk about this concept called compassionate curiosity. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. And so for the book and the TED Talk, I was trying to find a way to operationalize my process that's rooted both in the fundamentals of psychology and also just basic negotiation strategy. And so I recognize that people are scared in these conversations. So I can't give them something that's overly complex, because in that mental state, you're not going to be able to remember the theory, even if you understood it, right? And so the compassionate curiosity framework is a simple 3-part framework where first you acknowledge and validate the emotions, and then you get curious with compassion by asking open-ended questions, and then you engage in joint problem solving, so collaborative negotiation. But you'll recognize that the first step, acknowledging and validating emotions, that comes from cognitive therapy. That's what therapists use to help their clients, their patients, overcome those emotional barriers. And a lot of times in these conversations, we're dealing with high levels of emotionality, and we're not going to be successful unless we find a way to overcome that so we can have more rational dialogue.
Amazing. I love it. So acknowledge the emotions. That is the fastest way to reconnect somebody with their neocortex, right? When they're all having all these emotions, they can't think. So by acknowledging, you help them reconnect with their thinking brain again. And then you ask open-ended questions. That is where the curiosity comes in, and the compassion, the wanting to know, right? What I say in my trainings is dare to care. And then joint problem solving. And that's where I love your collaborative approach, because unfortunately, many people think that negotiation is something aggressive, right? It's something competitive, it's fight. Whereas why choose the hard way if you can do it easier? If you can have a collaborative conversation, collaborative approach, we all save time, energy, and probably money. So that's always the first thing to try. And I'm really happy you have that approach as well. And we need to promote this first and change this negative concept that still exists around negotiation. Negotiation is like a bad thing or a hard thing or a manipulative thing. We need to get rid of it. So wonderful. Thank you for the work you do. I'm doing it on the other side of the world. So keep doing it. Wonderful. Kwame, you're a father, and we all know negotiations with our children are one of the toughest negotiations, right? So can you share anything, a certain experience or tips for our listeners on how to negotiate better with the little ones?
Yes, and I'm glad you asked that question because Kai, my son, he's 5 now. He was the person who inspired that first step of acknowledging and validating emotions. He helped me to put words to it. I was reading this book called How to Talk So Children Would Listen and Listen So Children Would Talk. Fantastic book.
Yeah.
And they said that you need to acknowledge the emotions of your child. And so when I started doing this, it really was a game changer in parenting. And so my family, I'm a Caribbean American. So my family's from the island. So my dad's from Dominica, my mom's from Guyana. And usually, and when you have immigrant parents, there's no negotiation. You do what I say to do.
I know. Same.
Yes. And so when I was telling Kai to do these things, I was always reaching resistance. And it wasn't until I took the time to acknowledge his emotions that we started to have these breakthroughs. And so I use the compassionate curiosity framework at work and at home. It's designed to be versatile. So I'll give an example. So let's say I'm trying to put Kai to bed. Kai does not want to go to bed. They never do. And as an adult, I'm saying, all I want to do is sleep. Why can't you just accept this? And so what I say is, hey, Kai, it sounds like you don't really want to go to bed. And he'll express himself. He'll say, no, I don't want to go to bed. I want to stay up late and watch TV like you and mommy. Okay, so it sounds like instead of going to bed, you would prefer to come downstairs. Is that right? Yeah, no, that makes sense. I understand why you want to do that. And so let me ask you a question. What happens if you go downstairs and you don't get as much sleep as you need? He says, oh, well, then I probably won't grow and be big and strong like you. Okay. And do you want to get bigger and stronger? Yes. Okay. So what do you think we should do then? Well, I should probably go to bed. Okay. That's it. He reasons with
Wow.
himself. That's it. And then you see,
Amazing.
you just cycle through that framework.
Yeah,
Acknowledge
exactly.
and
That's what
validate
you just did.
emotions. Exactly. Yeah. So it makes life a lot easier once you start to filter every interaction through the lens of negotiation.
Okay, I love the approach. Now, I have to say, your son Kai is also very intelligent to be able to give that kind of answer, because my daughter would just answer, what would happen if you weren't an aunt? She would just say nothing.
That's fine.
So yeah, so negotiation skills are mega important at work, but mainly at home, because that's where we have most of the negotiations. And it's not only negotiation with our kids, it's negotiation with our partners, it's negotiation with our neighbors, it's negotiations with ourselves, where I am super, super, super passionate about this whole aspect of inner dialogue and inner conflict resolution. And that is why I called the show Life Negotiations, because we all negotiate every single day. And just like your podcast, negotiate anything, I'm curious about how to negotiate with anyone, including ourselves.
Yes.
And I also believe that having good negotiation skills allows us to be more resilient in life, allows us to face difficulty easier, because we have some certain skills that we need when we negotiate with others that we can apply then to ourselves. So if this all makes sense to you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so is there any situation that you can remember where you were facing difficulty in life, a hardship, a change, something that you didn't expect, that you didn't want, yet you had to go through it? And do you think, and if you're willing to share that with us, do you think your negotiation skills helped you? Do you think being a professional negotiator helped you face adversity better in life?
100%. And so let me tell you something that's interesting about the compassionate curiosity framework, and I know you'll like this, is that it's designed to help you with both the external negotiation and the internal negotiation. The exact same framework applied to yourself helps you to get more self-awareness and reach more emotional stability and clarity for yourself too. So when you're feeling uncertain about something, you acknowledge and validate your own emotions. What am I feeling? What is it that I'm feeling with precision, right? I want to label that emotion. Then I'm going to ask myself those questions. And then I'm going to figure out what it is that I need to do after this. So I'll give the example of when Kai was born. And so I have a tendency of underestimating challenges. So I'll say, okay, I'm going to do this thing. I commit to it. And then I'm like, why is this so hard? and that's how it was with having Kai. And I was honestly very surprised at the difficulty and my response to it. And so I had to say, okay, I'm not handling this very well. I'm struggling here. So what's happening? What do I feel? So I'm feeling a little bit, I'm feeling overwhelmed. That's one of the things I'm feeling, because there are things that I want to do in work, things that I want to do just in life. Now I'm really struggling to do those things. That balance is difficult. I'm feeling as though I'm not as connected to my wife as I used to be. That's difficult too. It's okay. That's it. I'm going to acknowledge and validate how I feel. That's step one. Then step two, getting curious with compassion. Self-directed compassion is an integral part of this equation, because a lot of times we are our own worst enemy when it comes to our self-assessments. We're too critical. And if we're too critical, then we're going to cut this introspective process short because it doesn't feel good. We're attacking ourselves. And so I say, all right, so why are you feeling this way? What's leading you to these beliefs, those type of things? And I'm recognizing, all right, I want to be the best husband I can. I want to be the best father I can. And I also want to be very successful in business. And I'm having trouble balancing those things, right? So I'm getting that clarity. All right, now I'm recognizing where this dissonance is coming from. Then we transition to joint problem solving, internally directed. And so with joint problem solving, what we're trying to do is we're reconciling the differences between our hearts and our mind. What is it that would satisfy me emotionally in this situation? What is it that would satisfy me substantively in this situation? What do I want tangibly out of this? Okay. And I start to get that clarity. And so by doing that, I recognize I need to stay connected at home. I need to also stay engaged at work. And I wasn't doing a good job of setting those barriers, those boundaries. And so I need to keep work at work and be the father and husband I want to be at home. And so as I kept on going through this process, and it's not quick, it's not a quick process, depending on the complexity. Sometimes it can be, but in this situation, it took a few months of constantly going through this process, reassessing and learning more about yourself through the process. And then I started to get that clarity, made the necessary adjustments, and relationship at home with Whitney and my son and work, everything is going a lot better. But I wouldn't have gotten to this point if I didn't take the time to negotiate with myself.
Wow, 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 wow. I absolutely love it. I can talk about this subject for hours and hours. But what you're saying, if you want to do this with yourself, it needs like a proper peace negotiation with yourself first, and trying to understand yourself of who am I, what are my needs, and from there take it also, how do I talk to myself, and am I kind to myself, or as you said, am I my own worst enemy? So this needs a lot of relationship building as well, right? You can't just overnight wake up and have these type of conversations with yourself if you haven't gone through the process of some sort of personal development, of getting to know yourself and even forgiving yourself for all the luggage that you're blaming yourself for, and which we all do, right? Yes. So it goes hand in hand with then personal growth, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I think this is the key to personal growth. And even recently, the timing of this interview is perfect, because I'm really competitive. So I like everything that I do is driven by competition. And so when it comes to learning, I'm saying I need to learn more because there are other people out there learning more than me. And so I remember a couple of years ago, my goal, 2 or 3 years ago, I started my goal of trying to read a book a week, get through a book a week, take notes, review the notes in the morning before I go to the gym as I'm consuming more books. And then I realized I'm consuming a lot, which is good for knowledge, but I'm not spending time with myself in silence, which is what I need for wisdom. You need to give yourself some time for these ideas, these concepts to marinate. Yep. And I wasn't giving myself that time. And so for the past week, I've not been listening to music in my car. I haven't been listening to podcasts, no books, no nothing. It's just Kwame time. And I'm just spending that time with myself. And silence can be scary. It can be scary. And a lot of times we delve deeply into these distractions like social media, YouTube videos, all those types of things to avoid wrestling with the uncertainties of life. And I think that's what we really need to do in order to gain that self-knowledge so we can be effective, not just in our careers, but also our personal life in general.
Absolutely. You're so right. And that silence is really golden, isn't it? When you just are not distracted. And that's when you learn about that voice inside your head, about what is it saying, how is it saying it? And that's when you connect with yourself. I remember I had that feeling when I was, so I decided to fast this year during the month of Ramadan. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not a Muslim. This is not for religious reasons. And it was the first time I did it, but it was I live in an Islamic country here in Dubai, UAE, and a lot of friends are doing it. So I thought this is a perfect occasion to just go beyond what I think is normal and possible. And out of solidarity, but also out of curiosity, I wanted to know, what is this? How is this? And then, you have all the beautiful aspects of it. But one of them is this, well, what I experienced and what I would say was the number one benefit for me was this inner calmness. It became more quiet in my head. And I didn't have, I didn't do less. I was continuing to work. I actually started my most important negotiation of my life in that period. But since I wasn't eating, I was only eating one meal in the evening for 30 days. And my body was not spending energy on digestion. And therefore, believe it or not, my mind also became just more calm, more quiet. I became more focused. And it was beautiful. It was easier to make decisions. It was just more quiet. It was beautiful. And that silence, I thought, whatever I do after Ramadan, I need to keep that silence. I need to keep that calm. So yeah, it's super powerful.
Absolutely. And
Thank
one
you.
of the things that I like to think about is, after I do something, what's the value? Right. And so, for instance, if we keep on distracting ourselves with these things, it's to avoid that silence. After that's done, what value do I take from it? And a lot of that entertainment, that craving for constant stimulation, doesn't have much value beyond that. But like you said, you take that time in silence, and from the outside looking in, it doesn't seem as though anything is happening, but you're gaining so much. And that which you've gained you can actually carry that with you after that time of silence too.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so I have also another question that I would love to ask you. Is, you wrote this wonderful article, and I want to thank you for that, about books on negotiation written by women. So you wrote that article in Forbes saying, many people have asked you, why don't women write more books on negotiation? And you say, wait a second, let's challenge that question. And why don't we ask, why don't negotiation books authored by women get more recognition? And then you came up with a list of more than 120 books written by women. And this is just a selection, right? There's even more out there.
Right.
So why do you think that is? Why don't women get more recognition for their work in this negotiation world?
Oh, how far back do we go? So when you think about, and let me reference these books. So for instance, Women Don't Ask by Linda Babcock, Sarah Lashiver. They have a really interesting sociological.
Sarah last week. She's amazing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
I did an interview with Sarah last week. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Sarah, let's not.
Sarah, yes. Yes. So they talk about the sociology applied to gender roles in the business world, and going all the way back to the times where, okay, we're hunter-gatherers. Just because of biology, men had to go out and hunt, and women stayed in to take care of the children. That's what worked for that time. And so as we've progressed past that primitive time, those roles have been crystallized, not because of value, but just because of the patriarchy, because of sexism, right? We're not in a stage where our value is determined by physical strength anymore. It's about intelligence, productivity, those type of things. Everybody can be effective in this. But because of the sexism that existed in the business world for centuries, our entire human existence, the idea of what a strong leader is, a good negotiator is, has always been a stereotypical male. And so because of that, now when we progress here to the modern day, because all the time the books that have been written about negotiation and business have been authored by men predominantly, we still look to those people who fit a certain character traits, a certain race, certain everything, right? We say, that's what a negotiation expert should look like. And this is something that I struggle with too. Most negotiation experts don't look like young Black males, right? Yep. And so what I wanted to do was take the opportunity to use my platform to amplify the voices of women in the industry, because there are people like you, people like Sarah Lashover, all these people who are doing fantastic work, but they're not getting the recognition they deserve because they don't fit the mold for what society has constantly said negotiation experts and professionals should look like. And so with the podcast, with Forbes and everything that I do, that is an explicit goal to make sure that I give voice to the women in the industry who are doing great work.
Amazing. Yeah. So we're facing pure human conditioning and unconscious bias, right? I mean, this is all unconscious in our subconscious mind, and we don't even recognize that we do it until, we come up with figures or whatever. So yeah, that is super important. And talking about not being the typical, I've experienced that my whole life, whether it was as a professional negotiator, as a female professional negotiator. I don't like to add the word female because I'm just a professional negotiator, that's it. But also before, I used to work in investment banking, and for 15 years I was on trading floors. And that's still also very male dominant. And then, so I was often one of the youngest, only female, the only foreigner, and the shortest. I should get like awards for how to be the outsider. And then still, you have to go through it, and you have to, more than others, prove that you are worth being there, or your value, or whatever. So, but then, although it's super unfair and it's annoying, and you're facing discrimination and racism and all those things, I think if you look at it as a challenge, it can also help you to say, you know what, I have to work harder than the others. So how can I develop myself better? How can I prepare better? How can I handle no better? How can I negotiate better? And to go where I want to be and where I think I can be and deserve to be, and just not take all the rest personally, but as a challenge. And obviously that's easier said than done. And I wasn't looking at it that way my whole life. But now looking back, I think having gone through all that and the discrimination part that went with it, I actually gained some skills that I might not have had if I wouldn't have gone through that. So it doesn't matter, all you male, white, old guys, professional negotiators out there. We're doing exactly the same thing. And I'm coming in with skills and all the skills that I had to build to be here, although it was the hard way. So
absolutely.
Okay. Now, what else did I want to ask you? The whole concept of difficult conversations and negotiations, it's something that is for absolutely everybody in every country, every age, every gender, everything. And right now, as we know, with COVID-19, there are a lot of difficult conversations happening, and there are unfortunately people splitting up, not talking to each other or not seeing each other, be it friends, family, couples, because the COVID-19 crisis brought differences of opinions, whether it's about masks or no mask, vaccine or no vaccine, anything mandatory or not mandatory. It's creating a lot of difficult conversations. And as an expert on this, what kind of tips could you give to people not to ruin relationships over this health crisis?
I think one of the things is recognizing that debates don't work. Right? There's a difference between effective negotiation and effective debate. Yeah. So, for instance, when we're watching the people on the news go back and forth, we have to recognize that they're playing a role. They're not allowed to agree with each other on anything. And a lot of times, with the media, they are constantly modeling bad behavior. And so, since most people, the vast majority of people, never get training on negotiation or conflict resolution, they don't have the skills. And so who do they see having these difficult conversations? Oh, the people in the media. I want to be like them. And then we're shocked when these conversations that we have using a debate style are constantly leading to destruction, right? Destruction of the relationship, and we're not being persuasive. And so I think really what we have to recognize is that if you really want to change somebody's hearts and minds, you have to use a more negotiation type of approach to it. something I always talk about in my trainings is that there's a difference between being right and being persuasive. Big difference, right? And a lot of times being persuasive, what it takes to be persuasive in the moment, it's not that it's hard to understand, it's that it's hard to do because we don't want to do it. If I disagree with you, I want to let you know where you're wrong and where I'm right. And that's the ego going out of control, because I wanted to lift myself up while putting you and your beliefs down. Not surprisingly, people don't like when you do that. And so again, what I suggest people do is they use the compassionate curiosity framework, because a lot of times people are unable to distinguish between facts and feelings. And what they're really articulating is a feeling, but they're articulating it in the form of a fact. And so what people end up doing is they wrestle with the fact as if it is the truth is what's really going to break that down. But if you recognize that it's actually an emotional barrier, and you use a little bit of empathy, then you can pull people more in your direction. But I think most of these conversations are doomed for failure simply because of the debate style approach.
Yeah, I love it. I love the fact that you say that on the media and what we see, they're playing a role. So instead of seeing them as the godfathers of truth, see them as actors. They're there to say a certain thing in a certain way with a certain political background, with a certain sponsor behind. And it's not that it's necessarily their personal opinion, and also the feeling what you described. I believe large majority of what's going on right now, the feeling behind is fear, right? Because you have fear of COVID-19, and then you have fear of side effects of vaccines. And that fear talking to fear is obviously not going to work. And then you have also, I believe, many people are afraid to die. But if you were to look at people who are afraid to die and ask them like really some honest questions, and they would answer back honestly, I believe most people are not afraid to die. They are afraid not to live. So with something like this coming and saying, oh my God, there's a virus out there, it could kill us. Many people go back to, wait a second, I haven't even lived yet. It's too young. Yeah, I'm too young. It's too early. So then see that as an opportunity of saying, what is the real fear? Is it fear of dying, or is it fear of not actually living? And then what can you do about it? And the whole debate is also, why would you like them to think like you? If it's just to outsource your fear, there are other ways of doing that. I don't agree with a lot of things that are happening right now, be it the COVID measures, be it the management of it, or a lot of things. And I have conversations about this, but I'm just not interested in those conversations, because I'm not interested in convincing anybody of what I believe. And, if they want to say what they believe, that's fine. But then, 5 minutes, that's fine for me. Okay, let's move on to what really matters here. But yeah, I think you pointed it out very rightly, that it's a feeling behind. And as long as we don't acknowledge that feeling, whether it's with others, but also with ourselves, we're having these conversations for nothing and wasting everybody's time, energy, and relationships.
Exactly. And I think one of the things we have to do is become a little bit more critical about the value of these difficult conversations. Because as much as I promote, hey, let's have these conversations, we have to ask ourselves, what's the impact? What's my goal? What do I hope to accomplish? And a lot of these debates that we have with the people around us, they don't lead to anything. We're just trying to score points. Now, if it's a situation where I have some concerns, let's say I have an underlying health issue, I haven't been vaccinated, and somebody wants to socialize with me, then that has an immediate impact on my well-being. And so this conversation now is a conversation of consequence. It matters. We need to have this conversation. But if we're just going back and forth on what should and shouldn't be done by the politicians that we don't get to talk to, then that has limited utility, and you might be better served just listening, empathizing, summarizing, showing that you've heard, and moving on.
Exactly. Yeah, I like that. Oh, let's see what will happen. Yeah, because we're not out of this yet. I think it's wishful thinking to say we're going to vaccinate the world and then everything's going to go back to normal. First of all, what is normal? Second of all, do we want to go back to how it was before? And third of all, if you can have a vaccine and still spread it, I don't see an end in this. So the question is, how is the world after this going to look like? and how can we impact that and make it the world that we want it to be. And with the work that you are doing and that I am doing, how can we, maybe use this opportunity to make the whole new world that we have to design anyway a bit more collaborative, with a bit less conflict and a bit better conversations, also on subjects that we don't agree with, and say, I heard what you're saying and what you're thinking, and I can maybe imagine or understand where that's coming from. Now, this is my background and my experience, and this is what I believe. And as long as you said, it doesn't have a direct impact on the lives of the person you're talking to, let people be. Let people be.
Exactly.
Okay, wonderful. Kwame, I loved having this conversation. I can truly go on and on and on, but I know we're both limited by time. If as a final question, you can give tips to people on how to do this. Obviously, we talked about your approach. Why do you think people are not doing? Okay, so they listen to this conversation. Now they know how to do it. And we both know there's still going to be people who are not going to do it.
Right.
So why is that? What is it that we're really fearing by changing the way we react to things? And how big is the impact that we can have? Can we really change the way our amygdala goes in fight or flight? Do we really have an impact? And what is the gain out of it?
Yes. So the reason why most people will listen to this and say, wow, that's a really good point. Yeah, I should do that, and then not do it, is because there are lingering psychological and emotional barriers. And that's what the book is about, my finding confidence in conflict. And I think a lot of people are surprised because they're expecting a book that's just laden with negotiation strategies, but about 60 or 70% of the book is dedicated. The first 60 or 70% of the book is dedicated to helping you to overcome your psychological and emotional barriers. Because with a lot of the negotiation strategies that we have, we're really just giving recipes to people who are afraid to get in the kitchen. It doesn't matter if you know what to do, if you're still not going to do it. So you have to figure out what it is that's holding you back and work to overcome it. That's one thing. The other thing is we can change our brain. And that's where the exciting science of neuroplasticity comes into play. Because by repeated interactions, by practicing certain things, we actually, in a very physical, biological sense, change our brains. Neurons that fire together, wire together. We're creating more neural connections every single time. And so for a lot of people, they've lived their entire life being conflict avoidant. And so that is the pattern that has been created in their mind. But it's going to take work. But if you start to engage in the habit of engaging in these negotiations, these difficult conversations, leaning into it, then you're going to rewire your brain and you're going to start to have these conversations more often. And so I really want to encourage people to start to make that shift, because like I said, the best things in life are on the other side of difficult conversations. And just using these tips can help to make those conversations easier.
Absolutely. Well, this was really a gold mine of information, what you've shared with us. Thank you so much, Kwame. It was, as always, a pleasure talking to you. For people who want to go further and learn more about you or your work, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm very active on LinkedIn, so you can find me there. And then, of course, if you want to learn more about the podcast, the workshops, those type of things, check out the AmericanNegotiationInstitute.com.
Wonderful. I'll also write that somewhere in wherever I'm going to post this. Okay, thank you so much, Kwame. I know you have a very busy calendar. I had so much pleasure talking to you, as always. I look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you all for the listeners, and I look forward to bringing you more inspiring guests.